Hello, hello. Welcome to the 29th episode of the Veggies Abroad Vegan Travel Podcast with the Chief Veggie Pusher, myself, Rebecca Gade Sawicki. Some of you may already be familiar with Veggies Abroad, but for those of you who aren't, we're a full-service vegan travel company that offers custom planning services, small group trips, a helpful blog chock full of just about everything a vegan or veg-curious traveler could possibly need, and this podcast. With this podcast, I hope to bring you guys the inside scoop on what vegan, vegan-friendly, and eco-friendly businesses are doing in the wide world of travel. Well, happy almost New Year to you all, and many, 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 many thanks to those of you who have been listening all year or who are just now joining me. I really appreciate it. If you listened to the last episode, you know that this year has been a whirlwind, but a big but there. It wrapped up with a super amazing trip to Costa Rica, which I am really looking forward to talking about today. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I thought it would be really cool for you all to hear from people who actually went on the tour, instead of me just telling you that it was the best time ever. I mean, I'm not lying. I think the only negative was it was too short. So joining me to talk about Costa Rica and their experience on the tour are some of my new friends, Lawrence and Christa. Thanks so much for joining me today, you guys. It's so great to see you again.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and not only is it great to see you, but it is great to chat about Costa Rica. I do not know about you guys, but I am sad that I am not there currently, especially as I look out my window and it's raining. There's a little bit of snow left, and it's incredibly gray and cold, and I'm miserable.
Yeah, here in Durham, it's kind of chilly for North Carolina, but we're not going to have any snow in the near future. No. So, yeah.
I might be able to change that for you.
It would be nice, actually.
Oh, all right. Well, in that case. So, okay, let's jump into our Costa Rica tour. So everyone has a sense of what did we do? What did you like? This was your first trip with us as a group thing. So for the itinerary, so everybody listening has an idea, like, where did we go? So you can kind of visualize the stops. We started in San Jose, which is like a normal meeting point for most tours if you are covering like central part or the southern part of the country. And then from there, we went to the La Fortuna, Arenal Volcano area, then made a quick stop at the cloud forest in Monteverde, and then rounded everything out with a lovely beach excursion in Manuel Antonio, and finished then back in San Jose. So you could all fly home sadly. San Jose is really great just as a transient city. It's not necessarily a like exciting destination, but it's important if you want to go home, I guess.
Yeah.
That was less important.
Yeah.
But
I know. It seemed kind of like a painful point for most of us. So first things first, why did you want to go to Costa Rica?
for me, a lot of friends had been, and the friends that are interested in like birds and nature and wildlife. So that angle of it, and it's like ecologically aware, savvy country, which is kind of a nice thing. Another big part for me personally was like having a really busy year. It was really nice to go somewhere where the time change wasn't a big deal. And like also the flight was a kind of nice, so it kind of made the trip, the getting there, not too challenging. So there wasn't a lot of recovery once we were there, ready to kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, that is always really nice. You don't have to like suffer through a 12-hour flight, then a 10-hour time change. That can be really hard, especially when you have a really busy itinerary to attack.
Yeah, for us it was about 6.5 hours. So, but that's me. Lawrence can chip in.
Yeah, I think it was just like Christa said, the ecological side was a big deal. But I think also for me, to see something I just simply have never seen before. We go to the beach, we go to the mountains, we go to towns, we go to cities. But when you step out in Costa Rica, you realize this is tropical. This is a jungle. This is a cloud forest. These are tarantulas. This is a monkey. These are sloths. This is, the Pacific, and it's warm. It's not freezing cold. It's just all those things that you just can't experience in many other places were really selling points for me. And a lot of people have also said it was just a really cool place to visit. So that kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say sloths and monkeys generally are something that really helps seal deals with people. Once you say those words, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. When can I get a flight? So this was also your first vegan tour, right?
Yes.
Correct.
This is kind of like a big first then in a couple of ways then for a different way to travel. I guess you can answer with the vegan side of it, but also the group side of it. Was it what you expected?
I went into it not with a lot of expectations, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. I just kind of wanted to see how it would be. I was expecting to feel like a sense of community, because that's really one of the other things that I was wanting out of the trip. I work as an editor from home, so I don't really deal in person with a lot of people. So that was, and that and just dealing with vegans and like having the in-person interaction was important. So that part of it actually was really satisfying and kind of what I had hoped for. I don't know if it was really what I expected, but I was hoped for, and I definitely felt like I got that part. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, and I think for me, the food and the food and the camaraderie were really special. The food, everyone was kind of blasé about it. You know, on the surface, like, oh, I hope you like beans, rice, and plantains. No, you're not really prepared for these kind of beans, rice, and plantains. They're really good. And you supplement that with all the fresh fruit and fantastic coffee. No, I loved the food. And like Christa said, everyone was really, it was great to be just surrounded by people that felt the same.
Yeah, like I kind of went, I like to cook, and I don't want to call myself foodie. I don't really like the term, but just I really enjoy cooking and food. And I was expecting it to be maybe a little more simple, and I was really impressed with the choices we had, actually, and the meals we had. There were some pretty amazing desserts, including that one, chiffon pie. Oh, yeah. I think it's one of the best desserts I've ever had.
Stellar.
Yeah, that stupid chiffon pie.
Deadly chiffon.
Yeah, there's so many ways to describe it. I was looking through photos and I was like, oh, I gotta figure out how to make this dumb thing again. It was crazy. And for people listening, it's like, I don't know, a mixture of like a mousse with heaven together.
And there was both chocolate and passion fruit. We had it twice. We were lucky enough to have it at both meals when we went to this restaurant. That was Arbol de Seda, correct?
Yeah, in San Jose. Yeah, that place was really fantastic. And they opened up special just for us because they were technically closed. It was restaurant hours on Sundays are really challenging in San Jose. And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll stay open late for you guys and give you really crazy desserts that you're going to talk about for a long time and then try and recreate and probably make a giant mess in your kitchen. Or maybe that's me. I don't know.
Well, I may try to duplicate it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get it as good as they made it. But it was really impressive. And that in itself was definitely something more than expected. So,
oh, that's awesome. Was it what you expected as far as like a group tour? Because I know some people feel like I don't want to do a group because I don't want to be stuck around people, and I don't want to have to do like the everything that's on the itinerary and so on and so forth. Was that what you guys were you worried about that?
I was to a degree, having not done it. So I wasn't sure if my worst case scenario was normal or my best case scenario was normal. But I mean, what I found is that it was a good mix of, you kind of have to be active based on the itinerary. So there was, I think, already kind of a weeding process there in terms of who goes. And most everybody really did well with all the physicality and all the hiking and walking. So I liked the approach of this tour. I know some tours you kind of just putter about, but this felt a little more active. And I enjoyed that for sure.
That's good. Were you ever like, there's too much people time? Either of you?
There was a couple days where and it was just due to traffic and logistics, but
traffic.
We didn't have some downtime a few afternoons. And sometimes as an introvert, I'm kind of the extroverted end of introvert, but I needed like maybe a half an hour before we would sit down to dinner.
Yeah.
And those are the only times I really noticed it, because on the bus we could, and traveling, we could kind of put on headphones and space out and have a little of that. But I felt like the group actually did pretty good as a whole. Like people that kind of wanted to do their own thing were off doing that a little bit more. And other people that wanted to be together, people that came together had that opportunity. So there was a little anxiety about that angle, but actually again, that was something I was also looking for. And I felt like it was a nice balance. Like other people recognized that they were introverts and like, okay, enough, even around bigger crowds of people we would see. I remember when we came back into San Jose, a couple of people were like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people here. Because the population seemed like it jumped since we had left, probably from, more tourists coming in. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went to some areas where there weren't a lot of people or who were like the main people. So that
it spoils you.
Yeah, that can be a little bit crazy to then have to be like, oh no, I have to share space now with other humans. That sucks.
Yeah.
And so people listening, traffic and construction and driving in Costa Rica is a pain in the butt, is the nicest way to put it. The country is small, but driving is an absolute challenge. It's almost like an Olympic feat, I would say. Mm-hmm. And it looks like when you look on the map, like, oh, I could get to the Caribbean coast like very quickly, or I could get a little bit north very quickly, but nothing happens quickly in Costa Rica. Everything takes an extraordinary amount of time. And then if you hit construction, you better have headphones or like the person you're sitting next to. So my last question on this, the vegan side of the vegan tour, was that kind of what you guys expected, or were you expecting something different?
I wasn't sure. You can be in a group and feel a little insulated by acceptance of vegans and like how much, not vegans themselves, but just the food. And I know that you and Sophie, what was her title? The tour leader. Like, I know you did a lot of negotiation on the part of the group for each place. And sometimes we would come and they would, like, oh, that's not quite what we have. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but I think there was, like our driver wound up being really curious about veganism at the end of the tour. Mm-hmm. Like he was asking a lot of questions about it. And I think it kind of sparks conversations, which, when you're vegan, you kind of get used to. But I feel like people in general were pretty friendly and good with it. Like overall, it was a pretty good experience. I think it was just a little bit like, you had to figure out some things as we went. We found out they weren't vegan, but that, when you're vegan, I think it kind of comes with the territory. You kind of, get used to rolling with it to a degree. So
yeah, in certain places you do have to have some flexibility. In other places you don't have to think about it. And Costa Rica is one that I'd say isn't necessarily vegan friendly, it's vegetarian friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that causes a little bit more stress. I had a very funny conversation with my driver on the way to the airport when I was going home. And he said, I don't understand, and this is in Spanish as well, I don't understand what vegan means. And so I tell him a little bit. He said, okay, so no fish. And I said, no fish. Okay, no fish. Chicken.
Get it on the list.
I laughed. I was like, oh, okay, just keep coming through. We'll get through all of it. I guess carne and pescado was not clear enough, but you can ask me each thing and we'll discuss this. But it ended up being like a very good conversation. And I'd say those are some of my favorite conversations when it's like someone who's like, okay, you seem pretty cool. So tell me more about this weird vegan thing that you're on.
That's where I know the driver and I really bonded, because I know he was very proud of, him being able to do these crazy calisthenics first thing in the morning. And, we talked about working out and everything. And I think he at first was surprised I could pull all that off and still gain that amount of muscle and weight with just a plant diet. But by the end, he was kind of understanding it. And I felt like we kind of bridged a gap there and we made a connection, which was really good, which is really important, actually.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's kind of like an unexpected form of activism, and it happens in a way that seems really natural and allows people to be inquisitive because it's not pushy or, make people feel like, oh, no, I have to do something different than, I want to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, keeping it conversational, I think, is good. And just kind of comparing notes about finding those commonalities between you and then kind of like introducing elements one at a time. Like, I found I have more energy because I do this. Yeah. If you really want to hit a new peak, you could try that. So, yeah, it seems to help.
Absolutely. And so was Costa Rica what you expected?
For me, yeah, honestly. Yeah, it's about what I expected. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I I didn't know what to expect, and I just know that I was happy. I enjoyed the trip. I liked that I went there kind of not being sure what it would be besides like looking at some pictures of other and hearing other people's experiences. But I don't know. I think it just went by really quickly, and I felt just like I could have stayed another week happily.
Hey there, fantastic listeners. Let's hit pause on this episode for a thrilling announcement, a golden ticket to Globetrot with Veggies Abroad. Veggies Abroad isn't just your go-to for vegan guides and trip planning tips. It's your passport to extraordinary small group journeys, carefully crafted by the ultimate veggie pusher and your favorite podcast host, me, Rebecca Gade Sawicki. I've spent countless hours researching the best vegan hotels, food, and experiences, and now I'm bringing those experiences directly to you. Join me and my newfound veggie pals on escapades to exciting and exotic destinations around the world. Whether it's trekking through the Thai jungle to witness elephants in their natural habitat, or staying at a carbon-neutral camp in Kenya during the Great Migration, our adventures are nothing short of spectacular. And guess what? Those aren't the only exciting trips awaiting you. So what are you waiting for? Cruise on over to veggiesabroad.com pronto. Well, how about after this episode is over, to explore our dazzling lineup of 2024 trips and secure your spot on your next vegan adventure today.
And I feel like people in general were pretty friendly. I mean, we've lived in tourist communities ourselves. Like we lived in Asheville, North Carolina. So we're kind of familiar with too, like how it can be when tourists come into a community and how locals might feel. You know, I feel like I have awareness after that of being a tourist somewhere. Yeah. And I have to say, I'm really grateful that we came at the time that we did. I feel like we caught it at like a really nice time before there was a lot of some places were busy, but we were hearing from people like, oh, it is nowhere near as busy as it normally would be. So I felt like lucky that not only we have really nice weather, because I was prepared. When you ask about expectations, I thought it would be much more rainy or maybe a little more volatile, but I feel like it was rain where you'd expect there to be rain, and otherwise we had pretty nice weather. So I thought that was, I expected actually, maybe worse weather, and it was better than I thought. So that part was really nice.
Yeah, you can't trust Google and its weather forecast. No. It's a jerk.
No, and one thing I'll add to that too is that I think living in the South, the U.S. South, the humidity and the heat actually were nothing different than our summers. And I think that actually was a nice realization, because we've been to the Caribbean and, there you just feel like you're directly under the sun and you are roasting. Mm-hmm. This actually just felt like summer, and it was really easy to deal with in shorts and a t-shirt and sunscreen. So it wasn't bad. That part was a pleasant surprise too. The temperatures and humidity weren't bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they're awful, but we're used to it.
Yeah, it's relative.
They're strong.
Yeah, it's definitely relative to where you are, but it was
absolutely. You do have some pretty brutal summers.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, there were points in Costa Rica where I thought, okay, it's definitely gotten warm, but I don't know if it could compete with North Carolina, maybe certain areas.
When we were on the beach, I do have to say you could feel the intensity differently. I don't know how to explain it. Like it just felt like being pushed on more by the sun in an earlier time in the day. So I did notice that difference.
I got a little crispy.
Yeah.
That walk back. Yeah. I wasn't prepared. That's on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the nicest weather that we had was like in the La Fortuna area, because it was pretty moderate. It wasn't like outrageously hot or anything like that. It was like right in the middle where you felt comfortable to be outside. And you didn't feel like you were being cooked.
Yeah. No, that was really pretty. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing a lot of billboards for like SPF 85. I was like, yep, there's a reason. There's a reason those are there. A lot of pale tourists.
Yeah, a lot of gringos getting fried.
Oh my gosh, yes. I can happily say I'm definitely one of them. Someone asked me something about like spending time in the sun. I was like, no, I don't spend any time in the sun. And I think it's incredibly evident that I don't spend any time in the sun.
I hiss at it like a vampire.
Yeah, totally. A vampire that likes to go to very warm locations, which is odd. So you've talked about a few of your favorite things. Well, let's talk a few more of your highlights. and you both can like jump in whenever. What were some of the best things you think that we did, or you did on your own? Because you all had, and I didn't mention this too when you were talking about the itinerary, I purposely planned in free time and a free day. And you know, that's a funny thing that you mentioned, like enjoying that. I every once in a while will get someone that gives them anxiety that they don't know how to fill that time. And I always say, like, don't worry, like when you get there, like you'll figure out how you feel like you want to fill it. But it's important for you to have some time to like do whatever the heck you want, like without someone saying, be here at 7:30 to eat. We have to leave at 8 o'clock. Then we're going to do bop, 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 bop. I think that's an important part of a trip, to have like some time where you can be like, I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to sleep, which are both perfect activities when you're choosing what to do. So favorite things that either we did as a group or that you guys did on your own?
One of the things I really enjoyed is when we went as a group to the park, and the one near fill in the blank for me.
Manuel Antonio.
Manuel Antonio. Yes,
yeah, me
National Park.
too.
We kind of had an hour between the more formal tour, which I find just as me personally, I don't care for as much of the group tour events in that sense, that I kind of like to wander around. So we had like an hour to wander and look at the beaches. And a highlight was just how close to the monkeys we were able to get. And I appreciated how strict they are about not bringing in like plastics and food, so that it wasn't, the monkeys weren't looking for, sure there's exceptions, but the monkeys weren't looking for food. And you kind of got in that environment where you could be closer to them, where you didn't feel like they were, they still were looking for people's backpacks, but, they probably were not getting as much food, or where they wouldn't get it there. So that was really a neat thing to have the first time you see like a monkey walking down towards you on like the railing in the park. It was like, wow, that was something else.
Yeah, it was cool.
And being able to be close like that. So that was that was just a highlight for me, is just kind of wandering around in there. And it was relatively, again, I felt it was relatively quiet. So we were able to walk easily on the trails and in the park without tons of people. The beaches were fairly quiet, and they're beautiful there. So that was a highlight. And again, for me, going back to the food, it was more than what I expected. I kept expecting, from what people told us, was like beans and rice. And I was happy with the beans and rice and the plantains. But I also really enjoyed some of the variety. So that was a big highlight for me. And meeting people and making friends. And I honestly feel like I really enjoyed everybody I talked to on this tour. It was just wonderful.
That's very nice. Lawrence?
I enjoyed, we did a separate outing with a paddleboard guide, and neither of us had paddleboard. It said there's always a little bit of anxiety at the beginning, but we picked it up quick enough. But the lake itself, I think practically a third of the horizon is dominated by the volcano. And a lot of that was luck, but we had really calm water. And the volcano's there. It's just breathtaking. And, typically where it's hilly or mountainous or treed, you just can't grasp the size of this thing, because rears up by itself. It just dominates the horizon. So being out on the lake, learning how to paddleboard, I'd say getting the hang of it to a degree. But also just constantly turning around and looking behind you or seeing off to your side a volcano. That was tremendous. I've always wanted to see one, so that was really great to see.
Yeah, your pictures were really great too.
That was
you guys
fun. Yeah,
lucked out all the way around.
Yeah, he kind of figured out on the way there that we weren't like typical tourists that like some of the usual shticks. So he kind of adjusted. So actually on the drive back, he was kind of telling us more interesting things. Like, when you beep this many times in traffic, this is what it means to drivers. And just telling us stuff that's the kind of stuff to me. Like, I like learning those little, feeling like I'm like learning a little bit more about what it's like to actually be there versus just touristy things. So those are the kind of things I love. And I thought that was really cool. He kind of pointed out some other things on the way back that felt, like that too.
More genuine.
Yeah. So that part was really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Christa said, of course, the food. I love food, and I love all sorts of food, and there was a lot of food. There was a whole lot of food. So I was happy about that, because I ate a whole lot of food. It was really good. And then, being surrounded by the same people that you don't know for 8 days, I was truly impressed how much I actually enjoyed everyone's company, and I missed people. I genuinely missed people when we left. So that was a highlight. You you kind of then feel like you're a group moving through a bunch of new and exciting things to share with people too. Like, oh, look what I found. We went and saw this. Like, oh, wow, it was a tarantula. That just those kind of little moments. It makes it more interesting, I think, to not just drop it on social media and get a like. You're actually sharing it with people. It's an experience you're sharing with people. Yeah. And that's really important.
Yeah, it's really nice. It adds a different, I think, layer maybe to the travel experience. And it's always really nice when you do enjoy like the other people that you can be around. And sometimes that can be challenging in a group environment, that there's like somebody that's kind of a jerk or somebody's that you just want to kind of avoid. But I think with our group, and I mentioned this on the last night, I noticed very quickly that people kind of formed connections with one another. They enjoyed spending time with each other. It didn't feel like it was forced. And that is always really a big bonus of it.
Yeah, I feel like, you can be on a tour with someone who's not happy with anything. And I just feel like, hopefully you're going for something like this where you don't want the same experiences that you're having at home or the same exposure to things, because otherwise you might as well stay home. So, that's when you're kind of sharing that with the people that hopefully embrace that. That's nice too.
Yeah, right. And the food too, the food was a good bonus. And I purposely warned you guys, don't get too obsessed with what the food will be like, because sometimes I'll have people, we'll see stuff from past trips, and it's really hard to compare countries to countries, because everywhere is so wildly different. And Costa Rica, as I mentioned, can be far more vegetarian friendly. But there were a few places like in San Jose where we stopped and started, or Manuel Antonio, there was a vegan restaurant. Manuel Antonio used to have 2, but the one unfortunately closed before we showed up, which sucks. And then some other ones that were really vegan friendly, which made things so much easier and enjoyable too, because it's always nice to be able to go somewhere and try new things and not have to just be like, I'll have a salad. Nobody wants that.
Right. No, nobody wants that.
No. Nobody wants salad.
We only want chiffon pies.
Well, we did notice we're not part of the necessarily the whole food plant-based as far as no oil and salt and that kind of thing. But we did notice, there is a lot less. I mean, there's some processed foods, but there is more just the beans, rice, plantains, simple foods on your plate. We noticed how much better we felt even coming home after eating that. Yeah, kind of made us want to do that more going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You didn't feel as heavy. I mean, there were definitely points where I felt heavy and was like, please don't make me eat again. Yes. Which is always really nice when you're traveling, when you're on a group trip, because that often doesn't happen. But yeah, I did notice that too, that on many menus there weren't, and this is no knock on these products. They're in my kitchen as I speak, but I didn't see Impossible or Beyond products or anything like that. And generally speaking, I see those really often because they're really easy just to add that on the menu and have it as, the option. But I think it was smarter there once, that is a part of the culture, but it's also cheaper and easier just to have beans and rice and plantains and stuff like that can easily be made vegetarian or vegan or, whatever. It's also gluten-free, which is really helpful for people who have to suffer with that like me. So I agree with you. It was a nice bonus for sure.
Yeah, I think if anybody was expecting it to be a fancy culinary tour, it's not that, but it definitely is more than, it wasn't just simple, and I kind of enjoyed, cooking a lot. I kind of enjoyed the simplicity of some of it, actually. It was really nice.
It's the quality of the ingredients too, because we even, since we got back, we've looked at plantains, we've looked at some pineapples.
Yeah, plantains here aren't really.
Oh no, we're not buying those.
I don't think we're buying any of those.
So it's a treat just to have something that fresh and well prepared. You don't need a lot of spices or oils or anything. It's just good in and of itself.
Yeah, totally agree. So would you return to Costa Rica?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, that's good. That's a good plug for the country as a whole. Me too. I actually, as I was staying out here, I was like, I wonder how much flights are to San Jose next month. And would you do another vegan tour?
Yes.
Yes.
It seemed like Lawrence kind of hesitated on that. I think he just doesn't want to spend.
Did I want to be sarcastic or just be honest? I'll just defer to be honest.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's fair. Are there tips that you guys would have for future travelers to Costa Rica? Whether they're going on their own or they're going with a group or whatever, however they're going.
Learn some Spanish.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I
needed more.
I felt like that I was disappointed in myself that I didn't make the effort because the people were very friendly, and I try to do that when I travel and didn't this time. And I felt like even making some effort would have been, and I did, in small ways, but not as much as I would have liked.
No.
So I'd say, the phrases you need to get around and
just the simple questions and
Yeah.
even just prefacing with, I'm sorry, I don't speak a lot of Spanish. Do you speak English? Just that's how you should open and not just barrel in Americano. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit of Spanish. A little bit of Spanish wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. I'd say when we were there, actually, the bugs, we actually didn't find that terrible, like mosquitoes and stuff, but you want to have, good bug spray in case you do run into, I'm sure when it's wetter, there's more to deal with. Lots of sunscreen, maybe not 85, maybe 85. I don't know if you need 85 SPF.
Whatever you need, a cape, a tarp, whatever.
Yeah, definitely be aware of that. Like you said, I think being prepared for if you're going to do multiple locations to just spend time in a car or a vehicle, and the traffic is also very different. Lanes are tighter. You have bikes zooming in and out of lanes. And
if you're driving,
that's, very different than what we're used to in the US. And that's just the way it is there. So it's just something to be, and that was part of the nice thing about a tour for us when we were looking around getting around, because usually we, kind of range all of our own stuff. And we're like, oh, yeah, it's nice. It was really nice to feel tired at some points and know that someone was, picking us up and taking us somewhere we have to do that. So we really, really appreciated that.
And I would definitely say quick drying clothes, no cotton, because everything I wore got sweaty. And you can get it washed. You can wash it in the sink, but you can't wash your boots and your boots will get stinky. But I would say definitely stick to stuff that wicks away moisture.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think I had one or two cotton t-shirts and that was it. And they pretty much stayed in the suitcase. But because otherwise it feels like it's stuck to you in the humidity, especially if you are somewhere that's warmer, and that's gross. And I think, and this is inappropriate, but mentioning that people they throw away the toilet paper instead of flushing it, which was a different thing, and because of the septic systems there, I'm not quite sure, but that was something that was different than here. It wasn't that a big deal, but good thing to know. Yeah, something like it's different. That's the way it is. So, yep. Lawrence, did you have other things? Anyway,
I don't know how you would, but
we won't get into that.
Are there any other last things that you would like to share about your experience or that you enjoyed? Any last thoughts?
Everything was handled so well, in terms of how things were handled. There's no reason not to do this kind of thing, because we even went back and forth on whether or not we would do it. So finally we decided to jump, and I think people just need to see the world. Yeah. And when so much is taken care of for you in instances like this, you need to do it. We've got the bug for it now, and that's all I can say is if you're thinking of doing something like this, just do it at least once to see how you feel. But it's totally worth it, because it throws you out of your, everyday life. It throws you out of your routine thinking. It makes you think on your feet. It makes you appreciate the moment. It pulls you out of your phone. It does a lot of good things.
I couldn't agree more. I don't think most people, when they're kind of on the fence with travel, and I'll even say this for myself too, that you're like, maybe I shouldn't do this. There aren't too many times when I've regretted the experience, or other people have shared with me that they've regretted doing it. Because there's always something to take out of it, which is really great.
I think what I enjoy about traveling, and I've traveled a bit, but not nearly as much as some people, but it kind of, it's like trying to figure out what kind of traveler you want to be and what kind of person you want to be and what do you want to bring with you go, like not physical things, but just how you want to behave, how you want to, I think each time you do something like this, including like a group tour and seeing other people and how they travel, it's a very interesting experience. So it's valuable from that perspective too, of seeing, just interacting with other people in that way. But that's what I take away from it, is I kind of realize when I come back, like things that, travel again or do a tour again, like what I do and don't want to do on a tour that makes me feel comfortable as a tourist and as a traveler.
Well, it was fabulous chatting with you guys and seeing you again. I've missed you both since I departed as well. And I'm so glad that you guys did end up coming and that you had a good time and that you were willing to share your experience with others.
Yeah, you did a great job, pivoting and kind of rolling with changes that had to be made. And just, we just felt like it went smoothly. And it was one of the reasons why we chose a tour. And it was, that part alone was just a really nice thing. It's kind of like our holiday gift to ourselves. And it was really good. It was wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Well, you're both very welcome. I appreciate that. That was very sweet of you both to say. And with that, if anyone has any questions about upcoming tours or questions about travel or anything in general, always feel free to reach out. And thanks so much to Christa and Lawrence for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks again for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. If you'd also like to learn more about upcoming Veggies Abroad tours or get additional travel help, visit veggiesabroad.com and also join our newsletter. It's the best way to stay up to date with loads of new content, like where to find gorgeous vegan hotels, what to eat in cities around the world, trip planning tips, and so much more. Well, that's all I've got for now. Until next time.